Great. Before I pass this off to our vice chair, Commissioner Richmond, I would just do a little bit of housekeeping here. Please remember to mute yourself when you are not talking to cut down on background noise. If you don't know how to do that, you can, if you move your cursor around, you'll see a little microphone. You just click that until it's red. And if you have something to say, you can raise your hand, by which I mean down in the bottom right corner. There's a little teeny tiny hand. If you click on that, it will alert us that you have something to say. If that doesn't work for you, when you're on the camera, go ahead and literally raise your hand, wave at us, or send me a text to let me know if I'm not paying attention to you. So I'm gonna, Janice, our chair, has had an urgent issue come up at her paying gig. So she has asked our first vice chair, Commissioner Dr. Marissa Richmond, to chair this meeting for us. So I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Richmond. You there, Marissa?
Can you hear me? I think so. Welcome to our June 1st, 2020 meeting. We're officially called to order. We have a parent quorum. According to the agenda, we have to. I need to take a motion to conduct the meeting electronically. So if I'm seeing Erwin Vinnick has his hand up. Erwin, Commissioner Vinnick, recognized.
Oh, there we go. I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this board meeting electronically as necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans, considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule that conflicts with Governor's Executive Order 16 permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
We have a proper motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Just out of curiosity for the minutes.
Jeremy Davis.
Okay, Commissioner Davis seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? You'll yourself say aye.
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 Okay. Were there no's? Going once, twice. No. Any abstentions? Hearing no abstentions, the motion is approved. The minutes from the last meeting, they were emailed in advance. And so we accept a motion to accept the minutes. Would anybody like to make such a motion?
And this is Mel. I'm sorry. And I think we're gonna actually need two separate motions. We had not approved, or you all had not approved the minutes from the March meeting, our last in-person meeting, during our special meeting. So we actually have two sets. We have both the March minutes and the minutes from the specially called meeting.
Okay, so March 1 first. It's been a while. But we'll first accept the motion to approve minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, got several seconds. Are there any discussion or amendments that need to be made? Correct.
Can you please clarify who made the motion and who made the second for our minutes?
Oscar made the motion.
And Erwin Venick second.
Thank you. Again, any discussion, any corrections or amendments to the going once, go see. Well, I guess we're ready to vote. You'll have to unmute. Signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
This is Pratik Dash. I'm abstaining simply because I wasn't the commissioner at that time.
You were sure. Okay, so one abstention from Commissioner Dash. So everybody else voted aye, so the motion is approved.
And then I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the special meeting minutes as well, just to speed this up.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Dash. Move special meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Davis.
Okay. Second, Commissioner Davis. Any discussion, any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Going once, going twice. Okay, I guess we're ready to vote. All in favor of special meetings signify.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, minutes for this. Next item on the agenda is the old business. We were discussing the 15 response policy on vulnerable communities. I guess we'll turn it over to our director, Mel, kind of let you remind us where we were and handle it from there. Ellie?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. I'm trying to help Commissioner Ali log in. So sorry.
Okay. Do you want to wait a minute to get her in?
I think I can go ahead and start. I think she's so from our specially called meeting, specifically to address issues related to the COVID-19 response policies and their the impact on vulnerable communities here in Nashville. We had spoken specifically about the data sharing between the health department and first responders, including the police department. We had talked about quarantine directives issued to residents who are in subsidized housing and other residents who are experiencing homelessness, and the criminalization of suspected violations of quarantine directives, and the somewhat unique and the disparate challenges that vulnerable communities face in when they are suspected of violating quarantine directives and then subject to criminal arrest and prosecution. We had also talked some about the the COVID shelter for residents who are experiencing homelessness at the fairgrounds, and had reached out to folks at the social services and in the mayor's office to get some clarification on policies in place at that shelter specifically, and a concern that a resident had raised with Vice Chair Richmond related to the policy in place on how to house transgender or gender nonconforming residents who are seeking shelter at the fairgrounds. And you'd raised a number of concerns about the policies and practices, and asked that I do some research on policies in other parts of the country, or recommendations from experts on some of these issues. And I sent you what I know was an incredibly long email, but I really do hope that you had an opportunity to review the resources that I sent, and some of the reporting around these issues. I can tell you that a couple updates since I sent that email. One is Commissioner Quibby Pretorius and our chair Rodriguez had an opportunity to visit and tour the shelter at the fairgrounds, and Mary Falls in the mayor's office was very gracious with her time last week in helping get some answers to the questions that I laid out in the May 13 letter addressing some of these issues. So I expect that Chair Rodriguez is going to share a memo with me on her experience through that visit at the fairgrounds. And if you have any remaining questions today about the fairgrounds, Judy Tackett, who is the head of the Homeless Impact Division with Social Services, has been kind enough to give us her time today. And she is on the call with us. And so if there are questions that she might be able to answer, she can do that. And then I think those are the only big updates since I sent my letter. So now I think it's incumbent, and I think that what you might all want to consider is what further response, concerns, policy recommendations you might want to authorize in this meeting, with regard to these issues. Was that too general, or?
No?
Yeah, I want you all to be able to take the lead on where you want to see recommendations or a response.
So, haven't seen anybody on
Pretty,
over the bottom right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dash, did you have you wanted to say?
I did have a suggestion. I was just wondering if I would pose it to the group. It might make more sense for us to split the policies. Let's first talk about the information being taken to the health department, recommendations there, and then move to the fairgrounds. Does that feel logical?
Pratik, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can everybody please mute yourself if you are not talking? Because we're getting a lot of feedback and I cannot hear Dash.
I can try again. I'm just going to repeat really quickly. Is just saying that I think it may not be a bad idea for us to make recommendations on each separate incident. Like maybe we first talk about the health department passing information to law enforcement and talking about those recommendations, and then moving to talking about the fairgrounds incident and how we can tackle that. I just think it might make more sense to split them up, and wanted to see if the group is okay with that.
Okay with that? If there are no objections, we can certainly do it that way. Seeing any objections, so you want to start with the health department policy about sharing information?
Yeah, I think that, just to give a background, I know I mentioned it very briefly last time, but for me especially, I just actually had a conversation with some Nepali community members who, in kind of East Antioch area, where 175 Nepali community members in Nashville who have all tested positive for COVID. They weren't even aware of this policy, and they felt like there was a betrayal of trust there. And so I wonder if there's a way to kind of show more transparency with the process, if the policy is going to hold, or more. What I would actually like to see is that policy somehow revoked. We can make a recommendation to remove the policy as a whole. But I think that there's that, and then I think that there's a lot of there's just a lot of vague kind of movement around those policies. I don't know how it works or the reasoning behind it, and I think not being able to see it is really difficult for citizens and constituents, especially people who are getting their information passed to law enforcement from the health department.
This is Mel. I do have some updates or clarifications that you might consider. I do know that there is no written memorandum of understanding currently in place. If you refer back to the email that I sent in preparation for this meeting, we did get some information from MNPD answering some of your questions. Right, the policy was put in place on April 1st, or the procedure began on April 1st. Out of concern for the health of officers and other first responders. Again, no formal MOU at present. And there is a process by which the information is expunged from the database. And literally the minute I sent that email, I received an update through Mary Falls that the procedure now includes the disclosure to the person being tested that a positive diagnosis will be shared with first responders, including MNPD. Now that necessary, and so that disclosure, right, is, I think, speaks to the transparency concern that you all had, but that leaves the larger question of the wisdom of the policy or the procedure at all, and the disincentive that might provide vulnerable communities or
Mel, you're muted again.
Now we suddenly lost you.
I would invite other commissioners to voice their opinions.
Mel, we lost you for about the last 30 seconds, so you might need to rewind a little. And
All I said was I would invite other commissioners to join the conversation.
Okay, well, who else in that case? Floor is open. Who wishes either to make a comment or ask a question? Anybody? Is that Reverend Tucker?
I just want to know for clarification, or is the rescue mission still following their program that they do over on Lafayette? Far as since the city is assisting them with that, they require that you get some Jesus before you get some water or some food. And I don't know if that's a conflict or not.
I don't know who wants to try to answer that question.
We might want to address that when we talk about the shelter. I think that's an appropriate time to take that up.
Yeah.
Tucker, if you, Commissioner Tucker, if you have any proposals around or suggestions regarding the data sharing, I think, now's the time.
Well, let me first just say I'm so discombobulated with everything else that's going around, and not that this is not an important issue, but I will always be suspect and skeptical of the sharing of the data, in that the city has made no effort to ensure that the 3,600 or so folk who already have COVID are being checked on and that they're maintaining whatever. I just think that the sharing of data continues to be a governmental overreach. And that's just where I am with that.
Anyone else? Other comments? I'll just go ahead and echo that. Particularly concerned. It's one thing if it was being shared with the EMTs, so they would know how to treat somebody if there was an emergency. But I would, I'm disturbed with the idea of sharing it with the police, and the notion that they would be charged with some sort of misdemeanor. Getting sick, in my opinion, is not a crime and should not be treated as a crime. And we're already seeing, especially in Trousdale County, some horrifying numbers, and in other places where prisons are particularly bad and contagious. And the idea that criminalizing people and then throwing them into a situation where they might, where the situation would actually be worse is very disturbing. And we're already seeing, I think it's both Chattanooga and Knoxville saying they will not do this. And I think Nashville should not be doing it either. So that's my personal opinion. Others who wanted to chime in, did I hear? So
I just want to say I concur with you, Marissa. I 100% with everything that you said. I mean, it's a little weird for me because I haven't been in Nashville since March 7th. I'm still in Florida. So I'm not, I mean, I'm reading these things, but I'm not there experiencing it. And this entire thing is sort of, if I could be frank, it's despicable, devastating, and unthinkable to me that we're criminalizing illness that otherwise we're not able to get access to testing, that it is so difficult to be able to get, medical attention, and then now we're going to criminalize this when folks often and exposing people. I'm troubled, and so I just echo what you said. Thanks, Marissa.
You?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation, and of course, I agree. My biggest thing is that a lot of times when a big thing comes out like this, I worry that other things get lost in the conversation. So this was like a big reveal in the media, and then it was like, you know, a big advocacy push on a lot of great people's parts, along with like the homelessness concerns in general, people experiencing homelessness concerns in general. I'm wondering if there's like some sort of consolidated list or discussion or documentation of sort of all that's come to the surface as a result of COVID and how it's impacting disenfranchised Black communities, communities of poverty, all the things that we're sort of learning about Nashville again through this illness and how it's been dealt with. And because I think that there's a really interesting magnifying glass on everything right now. And if we can focus and maybe document it and have it clear in our heads, it can yet again spring to the surface. I mean, Jesus, like David Tucker said, notwithstanding everything we are dealing with right now, which is related, obviously, that I think that there's an opportunity there to discuss everything, not just the things that the media are bringing to our attention, for instance. So that's a big ask, but I'm just wondering if anybody knows about what's been done.
Question I have
Dr. Cornelia,
you guys, so Commissioner Ali has her hand raised. So
Yes.
if you want to speak.
Thank you. I was just going to say Dr. Cornelia Graves at St. Thomas Hospital does have a background in has been, I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago, and she has been researching that, Miriam. So she might be a really good resource to tap into. And I just wanted to just make a brief comment that echoes what everyone else is saying, but summarizes it in one key word, which I think we can build a lot of our thoughts around, and that is the word trust. I don't think that there's so much an issue about sharing information when there's trust, but when there's a breakdown in trust, it becomes very difficult for us to be comfortable sharing anything. And so it seems a little bit wild to be even having this conversation when at the heart of the matter and why tensions are as high as they are in part is because not only because of the brutality which we've seen, but also because the breakdown in trust between the people and the institutions, particularly the institution of law enforcement that is supposed to be there to protect the people.
All right. Thank you. Who else wanted to make a comment? Was that Aaron Pryor? Did you have a follow-up to make?
Thanks. I don't know how to raise my hand on this, so I didn't mean to be like just jumping in. I use Zoom, so I don't understand this one, but so I apologize. And Smar actually like kind of extended where my question might go. For me right now, I'm feeling like, I agree with the trust factor, but I feel like there's such a lack of information, accurate information, misinformation, a lack of transparency about these things, that I think that's why this is also so troubling to me, that like we're having to have a conversation and in essence about people being like exposed for this, but I don't know that we have any. I mean, Miriam's idea I thought was is wonderful, but I feel like the information that we're getting, which again leads back to that trust thing, is it even accurate? Is there actually information being shared before we can even worry or think about its accuracy / its ability to trust? So that was my only question. And it was a question, truly. It it wasn't a comment because I genuinely don't know.
So I have two, I guess, a comment and a question. I guess the first comment is that the rationale that's offered for the disclosure is to provide protection to first responders. I mean, to the extent that it's fairly well known that people can be carriers of COVID-19 without having any symptoms and not being tested. I have some concern for our first responders, meaning if they respond to something at somebody's house, are they assuming that the person who lives there is not positive? And on what basis is that assumption being made? It seems to me that first responders should assume that anyone can be positive and therefore they should not expose themselves to that. In terms of, from another angle, I think there's a matter of informed consent, and I'm concerned that there has been testing done and disclosures being made without individuals providing consent to that and being informed that might happen. Granted, those disclosures are permitted under HIPAA, but I think that there should be disclosure so people can decide whether they want to have the testing done or not.
Commissioner Pryor, I think you said you were asking a question, but I don't necessarily know if I understood the question, so I can't know if I can answer it. With regard to this specific issue, I think, there are no further unknowns except perhaps the extent to which, two things, the extent to which residents will be sort of disinclined to agree to be tested or will seek out testing, because of the disclosure and the extent to which law enforcement officers are perhaps, as Commissioner Vennick said, receiving, getting some false sense of security. And, if you have any other questions about, how the practice is carried out, I'm going to refer you to the information that I sent last week that is very clear answer on how that data is being treated. Though like I said, there is not necessarily a written MOU, but we did receive an answer directly from MNPD, and I will definitely append that information to the minutes of this meeting.
Mel, I definitely read that stuff. The only thing I didn't do was listen to the meeting that I missed last week or the week before because I had a work meeting at the same time. Maybe my question was, and this kind of goes back to what Erwin was saying, I guess my thoughts are all health practitioners, as far as I know, take every single precaution that the people that they interact with potentially have COVID. And they wear masks and they wear guards and they do all of these things. So I think my issue here was, the first issue was, why wouldn't first responders just also take those precautionary measures, and then we wouldn't have to exploit people's health history. And then I guess my other question was, and again, I apologize because I haven't been in Nashville for 3 months, so I don't know what it's like, but I thought I had COVID. And so now I'm going to be getting an antibody test later this week. And it took me 5 days to figure out how I could get tested, whether I should do the nose swab or the blood test or the whatever. And then I had to go through all these hoops to even be able to do that. So this issue of people not getting the test because they're afraid of X, Y, and Z I don't know if that's different there. And so people have great access to this and are avoiding it because of exposure or exploitation or notions of them being known or seen. So it is my bad because I didn't listen to last week's meeting, but I did read everything else that you sent to me. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding something, but thank you for the other part of the clarification.
And, you know, just for further clarification and ensuring that you all are working from, you know, an accurate set of facts, right, that the information is also shared with other first responders, right, like fire and EMS, and that they can then take additional PPE measures, and you know, also alerting the sheriff's office and the facility there to notify personnel at the sheriff's office if someone coming in is has been tested positive.
So
Commissioner Pretorius has her hand raised.
So my question is, do we know that our first responders have enough PPE? Because I think part of the reason they cannot just show up at every house completely covered from head to toe is that there's still a shortage. On Friday, when we toured the homeless facility or shelter, I mean, the Marcel, who gave us the tour, said that they're going through 500 masks in 2 days. And that they have a severe shortage of masks. So I think, I mean, it's easy to say that they should all wear masks and full cover when they show up, but if it's not available, it's not available. So how do we know what the situation is? Is it available?
I don't know the exact answer. I will say that Chief Swan and the Office of Emergency Management has made it clear that yeah, it's a struggle to get the full amount of PPE that Metro employees and first responders need. And, you know, some of it is supply chain issues. And yes, that is, it's definitely not, we're not living in a scenario whereby every bit of the kind of PPE to keep people safe is fully available, or we can get it in any sort of timely way.
Commissioner Tucker's hand is back up.
Yes, my response to that would be, even if that is the case, I still think it's an overreach, and that should not be the reason, again, that if they don't have enough, we need to get enough, so we can, because if the exchange is, oh, so they don't have enough, then this is why we're going to do this like that. I still think that it doesn't really address the problem.
Okay. Commissioner Dash.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Tucker on this, and I really appreciate everyone bringing the concern of first responders. But in my opinion, first responders should be protected no matter what. Like, we should always be protecting our first responders, and you know,
Amen.
by alerting them that of known positive cases and stuff, that creates just a false sense of security for them as well, right? We don't know if they have COVID, don't have COVID, like that is, they should just be protecting themselves at all times. And so I just want to be clear that this policy the answer to protect our first responders, that's a separate issue. And it's, that's another thing we need to be talking about, is that why don't we have the right type of protections for our first responders? So I really
Thank you. I totally agree. That was totally my point. Thank you so much.
Okay. Did you finish your thought? Okay. Commissioner Ali, did you raise your hand, or did you forget to take it down?
Oh, do I need to take it down? I can take it down.
Okay. You have the floor if you want it.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Hold on. Let me just. Anybody? Oh, Commissioner Tucker, did you put your hand back up, or was it still up? Okay, you've taken it down. That's fine. Anyone else? Anything else? Mel? Any before we move on to the fairgrounds?
Well, are there specific recommendations? Is there a proposal? I guess I'm looking for direction from you all.
You guys, I don't know how to raise my hand. Am I doing something wrong here? How do I raise my hand so that I'm not interrupting people?
Okay, if you look over the list of participants on the right hand, you'll actually see a little hand. If you click on that, raise your hand.
Oh, I think that I left that screen because I just see everybody, but I don't have so if I go to participant on the top, that might be able to do it. No, that's not it. Communicate.
Well, that's fine. Just
it doesn't matter. I just didn't want to be rude, and I don't know how to use this, and so I really apologize. I just want to reiterate that, Mel, I don't know how we do it, but I feel like Commissioner Dash, Tucker, etc., all of us have sort of been saying the same thing here, that it seems to me that the privacy of and the access to and the care of civilians should not be hindered by whether or not they're going to be exposed. And I also think that any first responders, as are health practitioners, provided with all of the necessary precautionary measures, understandings, equipment, masks, all of those things should be, if there's any way for us to move in that direction as proposal or whatever, then that should be the case. Because to me, it seems like it's most important that those folks that are going to be in the community dealing with people, they don't need to know one way or the other. They just need to have all of the necessary resources and be taking all the precautions that anyone else that's dealing with anybody that may or may not have COVID does. That's my 2 cents anyway.
I see Commissioner Dash's hand is back up.
It is. I obviously full advantage of my first.
That's okay.
So much.
So Matt, are you looking? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I just think that my recommendation is that we find a way to talk about how to remove this policy and work with the necessary commissions or agencies to make sure that our first responders are protected. I think that whatever we need to do to get rid of this policy, whether it's a statement, whether it's something, I don't know what it is. I think we should attempt. That's my thoughts on it.
Would it help if you had this in the form? Are you looking for this in the form of a motion that we vote on, so that you can then take that forward with you? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, right, exactly, like some direction. So, Commissioner Dash, welcome to the commission. I'm super excited to have you on board. But so this body can adopt a resolution. You can adopt a policy statement. You can direct your policy statement to other leaders, and including the mayor's office, Metro Council, to any other Metro department. You can, in that resolution, either state exactly what your policy recommendation is. You can also authorize the your director to support
You're giving me way too many options, so I'll try and keep this simple. I'll just
okay,
say
but wait, let me say this one last thing. Or you can direct the support of pending legislation. For instance, Council Member Sledge has a resolution that I included in your email in preparation. So those are some of your options.
I appreciate that. I will. I don't want to word this incorrectly. So other council members, please feel free to help amend what I need to say. But I would like to make a motion to create a resolution that helps, I guess, to end the policy of distributing data from the health department to wherever that data is going. That is probably, I did not word it correctly, and I could probably do a lot better. So if anyone can put it more eloquently, I would open the floor to them. And Mel, you said I could make a resolution to support legislation or end legislation. Can you repeat that piece one more time? I apologize, and thank you all for bearing with me.
Oh, of course. You are a new commissioner, and I very unfortunately have not given you a good solid orientation. We're gonna get there. But yes, you can suggest by motion, to support pending legislation. And so, for instance, if you want to support the resolution that was filed by Council Member Sledge.
I will make a motion to support the resolution that was filed by Council Member Sledge. Let's do it that way.
Okay, we have a proper motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
And was that Aaron Pryor?
That was.
Okay, now we have a second from Commissioner Pryor. Any further discussion on the motion?
I would like to amend that motion to encourage Metro to provide appropriate PPE to all first responders when they are addressing issues in individuals' residences.
Are we able to do that in the same thing, or do we have to do that in a separate motion?
Well, he offered it as an amendment, so we would have to.
Sorry, Marissa, what'd you say?
I think she may have froze on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way we have an amendment. So we would need a second on the amendment. We could discuss the amendment if we vote to approve it to the original motion, and then we would vote on the original motion. If the amendment is voted we would go vote on the original motion without the amendment. So, so right now.
So am I allowed to second the amendment?
Yes, you are.
I second the amendment then. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proper motion and second on an amendment. Any discussion on the amendment to make sure I get this worded right, to request proper or adequate medical supplies, PPEs, I guess is the term, for Metro first responders. I hope I got that right. So that's the amendment that's been proposed on the original motion. Commissioner Dash?
Oh, my hand might be up from previously.
Okay, Commissioner Gibson then.
Yeah, my apologies. In light of the amendment discussion, can someone just give me a full recitation of the amendment that's presently, or excuse me, of the motion that's presently pending with the amendment? I just want to make sure I'm clear on what we're voting on. My apologies. Okay,
well, right now we're voting on the amendment issued by Commissioner Vinnick. Restate his amendment, because that was, I'm probably screwed it up.
What I'd like to know is what is the full motion, including the amendment, if somebody could recite that for me.
I think the motion would be to support Councilman Sledge's proposed resolution, which requests that the Metropolitan Health Department cease its practice of sharing information about positive COVID-19 tests, and I amended that to also encourage Metro to provide PPEs to all of its first responders.
Okay. We're technically only discussing the amendment about the PPEs. Is there any other discussion on?
Well, I think that was a good clarification for Jeff, though, because he wasn't clear about the resolution or the amendment. So that, that clarified it for everyone in case anybody wasn't sure, I think.
Right. Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we're voting to add the amendment. All in favor of adding the amendment, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
No. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes. So it is now the original. Again, Commissioner Dash, restate your original motion, and of course, we just added the amendment about the PPEs.
Sure, I'll go ahead and just try and repeat the whole thing with the amendment as well, but it is a resolution to support Councilman Sledge's legislation, which would remove the policy that we've discussed, and with the amendment that Commissioner Vinnick added in of providing PPE for our first responders so that they can continue to be protected during this time.
All right, thank you. Any additional comment on the motion as amended? I'm not seeing any hands up, so we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, so this is Mel. So some housekeeping on this, that with the adoption of your resolution, then I will communicate that to council members and to other Metro departments that are impacted by that piece of legislation, to ensure that that your concern and your opinion is made clear to them.
Okay, thank you. Do I see our chair, Janice Rodriguez? Is this correct? Are you now in attendance with us? Because I see your name here suddenly popped up. Janice Rodriguez, are you here now?
Hold on. Michael, I think you're hosting us now. You replaced Kevin from IT.
Yes.
Yes, we have somebody who's on the attendee list who promoted to a panelist. It's Janice Rodriguez.
Okay. There you go.
Yes, thank you very, very much, Michael.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Thank you. So at this point, now that our chair is officially here with us, I turn over the invisible gavel. Janice, it's yours, and we're about to turn to discussing the fairground shelter. So welcome, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So sorry about the delay, and then I could not get in. But are you hearing me okay at this point? Everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm on the agenda to discuss the fairgrounds visit. Commissioner Pretorius and I were able to take a tour. Was that just Friday? I believe it was.
Yeah, you might want to turn off your video. You might get a better connection.
Gotcha. Okay. So I have yet to draft an official memo or report from that that tour that we took, but we were treated very, very warmly. Everything was open to us. Any questions that we had were answered. It does seem like that they have, while, modest facilities there, everything is very clean, very well organized, orderly, medicines, medical care, health care, consultations. Some of the things that they didn't have, they don't have anything as far as getting people access to computers. They do have Wi-Fi, but they don't have laptops or desktops or anything like that, so that people can actively look for employment. I mean, just first impressions were that that they were. It was a very positive environment, really. I mean, that was my impression, and I would also like to defer to Commissioner Pretorius on this for her opinion.
Yes, I have to say, Marcel, who gave us the tour, he's an absolute delight. He showed us around. He really cares. What we asked him at some point, what do they need? And he said they really need masks. And then they have this area where there's donated clothes, and there's a lot of women's clothes, but he also said that there was a need for men's clothes, especially like nicer shirts for the guys who were going out to interview for jobs. It definitely felt, he said that what he told the people living there right now is that this is your chance to get on your feet, and they are really trying to help, from what we could tell, encouraging them to find jobs, work on their CVs. There's laundry machines, everything looked clean. I definitely left, and I just felt like they were in good hands.
Right. We did have, Miriam, I'll get to you in 1 second. We did ask direct questions about what happens when they come in. How were they being processed? What the safety concerns were. Specifically, we talked about, they have a separate area for people who are COVID positive and or under observation. And I asked, if they had to stay, if they had other places to go, if they could be released to other, if they said they had an address of some other place to stay, they were free to leave. We also talked about safety for transgender populations who may come in, and he was, and this was, I think, perhaps right after you left, Commissioner Pretorius, we had a conversation about that, and his report is very different from perhaps what he feels is being shared in the media and our other sources, because with his concern was mainly about keeping someone safe and maybe making sure there was one individual there, and she was offered things to make her feel safe because she was the one who reported that at times she felt that she was receiving scrutiny and a little bit of criticism. So they made accommodations to open, a family restroom, if you will, that she could have access to make her feel safe. He said that they were also that as a courtesy or as an extra protection, if she wanted to check in with him, Marcel Rivers, to let him know when she might want to be in the shower area, just so that no one would bother her, but it wasn't in his the way he explained it, wasn't being called out, wasn't being treated any differently other than making accommodations for safety when she felt unsafe. So that was kind of he was very straightforward about it. He welcomed anybody that had any questions to directly talk to him, because he seems to be there all the time and in everyone's business, really. I mean, he makes it his business to make sure that he knows what's going on in the facility.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
On the email, it indicated that Commissioner Richmond had heard from a transgender woman that was denied requests to sleep on the woman's side. And then it goes on to say something about being interested in hearing efforts to avoid criminalization for noncompliance, et cetera. So can you, I don't know, expand on that? Because that seems like if this transgender woman was denied that opportunity, that the other measures that you've spoken of don't really seem to be,
This is Mel.
properly.
Yes, this is Mel, and I do have some updates. I had follow-up conversation with Commissioner Richmond, and the woman that she heard from has since left the state. So we didn't open a formal complaint. But I will say that I know that social services policy is to provide for self-identification and gender identity, and to decide right based on that self-identification which side of the shelter to sleep on. Is something that they deal with in the cold shelters during the winter. And I heard, again, thank you to Mary Falls and the mayor's office for doing some legwork on this, to hear from Jay Gervais from the Office of Emergency Management, that he confirmed that that they too understood that to be the policy. So having those
Do we have-
conversations, I feel fairly confident that the concern has been heard and the policy is clear.
Do we have any information about if that woman was like felt pressure to leave because of not being supported and acknowledged? That did she have somewhere to go? I mean, if she left the state, do we have any information about not only the why, but the support measures that were in place for her to be able to do that?
No, like I said, we did not open a formal investigation, but so I did not hear directly from this woman, though I'm fairly certain that there is had there, if this were an investigation, there's a fact dispute over, why she left. If we're talking about the same resident, then it was I think that she had violated a disciplinary rule in the shelter. So her being asked to leave from the shelter official, Metro folks who were there, right, their perspective was that, if she was asked to leave, it was because of a violation of a disciplinary rule. But as I said, I did not talk to her. I don't have any real investigative notes. I know Erwin and Dr.
sorry.
both have their hands up.
So I had a somewhat different concern, which is first, whether the facilities are appropriate facilities for a very vulnerable homeless population. I know there's been some discussion about whether or not the facility at the fairgrounds would be considered a congregant facility. I understand that congregant facilities are not considered best practice nationwide. And I recall being part of a webinar that Dr. Caldwell had about a week and a half ago, where in his comments, he was stating that Metro should look at what's happened over the last 2 months as a blueprint of what we should be doing going forward. And I just have some concern about how we have addressed the homeless population in the face of this novel virus.
Well, yeah, I know that Judy Tackett is on the call. And, Judy, you definitely do not have to speak to this. But if you have information or resources that you would like to point this commission to, I'm happy to give you some time to do that, or to pass on information after this meeting to the commissioners.
Thank you so much for that, if I may, and thanks for having me. I do have some information. We do have received had technical assistance for COVID-19 around homelessness, and I will forward you a document where that outlines best practice approaches. It outlines better approaches. It outlines good approaches. And Metro definitely falls under the good approach under CDC guidelines. It is okay to do congregate shelter. It may not be always for the best practice approach for every population under the COVID. There are different populations when you look at it under the COVID illness. And I have a one-pager I can share with you that outlines this. But Metro and OEM has really worked hard to work with the health department to outline this based on CDC guidelines as a congregate shelter.
One thing to note when we were there, I mean, there was continual cleaning happening, access to hand sanitizers, and the facilities on the, I guess, COVID side. I mean, hard door locked, not locked, but, shut off, separate, with its own healthcare system on the side, people, so they, definitely taking all necessary precautions there. And while the sleeping facilities on the COVID side were only curtained off from each other, I mean, well, currently I think they had one person there was only one person in that entire area who at that time who had any kind of, who was tested COVID positive. And, so as far as best practices, I feel like that the fairgrounds facility was definitely, in compliance, and doing everything that they possibly could.
Erwin, do you still have your hand up?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. My hand is down.
Okay, Miriam, your hand is raised.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I had mostly the question that the whole community of advocates on homelessness were asking about, which was whether the fairgrounds are actually CDC, like actually good for those that are COVID positive, and this ongoing debate about getting hotel rooms. So that's what I was mostly interested in. So I appreciate Judith's response and Erwin's question. The other thing that I just have to say, because I have to hop off at our allotted 5:30 time because I lose childcare at that time, is whether we are going to have the discussion about what's going on right now in Nashville. And I just want to make sure that I'm here for it and that I understand what we as a commission sort of want to do about it, given that, a month's going to pass before we meet again. So I don't know if that was a planned discussion or not, but I just wanted to ask before we lose time.
Well, this is Mel. The agenda for the meeting, which is a public meeting, was crafted and posted before this weekend. Now, that doesn't mean we can't address an urgent and emerging issue. We do have legal counsel on the call with us. If you have a recommendation that requires action by the commission, it's not on the agenda, I would really want to defer to legal counsel on how we might do that. If you are asking just for a general conversation, I don't necessarily think it needs to be on the agenda. So you give me some guidance on where you are.
I guess what I'm wondering is, or not what I'm wondering, what I think we might need to do is be public about sort of our stance on things, right? I think we have been when we've had issues with the police department here in Nashville. So I'm just wondering, do we need to be public? Do we need to make a statement? What is our statement? Do we wait till things unfold more? I'm just curious what other commissioners think I should say. It seems like we need to be relevant in this conversation.
I agree. This is Janice Rodriguez here, that we need to at least bring this up as new business, something that needs to be addressed formally by the commission. We send a message if we don't say anything. I mean, and we really can't. That's not our job. This is relevant. This is very important. And so I'm open to whatever rest of the commissioners feel that would be the next best action.
I wish that I knew like what the next best action could be. That's, I think, the struggle right now. But I'm in agreement, both with Miriam and Janice. And thank you for bringing these things up, that we can't be silent. I'm struggling quite a bit with, how and what to do. Not only like, sort of this is my personal plight in life and area of focus and what I study and do, but also as a human being and also as a commissioner on this commission. I am really struggling with the way in which we are able to do something. I mean, I can't take it anymore that there won't be action. I don't think that it's acceptable that there wouldn't be. I wish that I had something better to say, besides the fact that I have been so disturbed and so emotional and so incapable maybe of being sort of like able to find rational, sort of logical thinking about steps that make sense in the context of us as a commission and what we can do. But I am in agreement with the fact that this can't go unspoken. We are a voice, and we're a voice for the voiceless. We are a voice for the marginalized. We are a voice that says that these kinds of things are unacceptable. And so I wish that I had a more eloquent way of saying what we could do to express that. I don't, but I support whatever the terms are that we come to together as a commission. Thanks.
Commissioner Tucker, you have your hand raised, and Commissioner Yazbek, Commissioner Venick. Tucker, go ahead.
I appreciate the opportunity that we get to at least discuss this. And just by the way that we meet and all that goes on, so often it's hard for us to stay up on top of the situation. And oftentimes our response is well after the train has left the station. My sense is this is a watershed moment, not only in this country, but particularly for Nashville. I was repulsed and insulted by Chief Anderson and Mayor Cooper's letters sending their thoughts and hope up north. When we have a clear 5-year, easily documentable public police problem, there have been demands that have been laid at the table, clear, reasonable civic demands, the changing of training, putting in review of officers such as Lippert, who had 8 incidences of use of force and suspensions before he killed the guy over in Casey. You have a police chief who's been in a department for 40 years. There is a total lack of trust. The community voted for community oversight. And just as 2 weeks ago, an individual was shot in the leg and they did not notify the Civilian Oversight Board. The board members and the director will express to you right now today their continued frustrations with dealing with the police department. The people have spoken. All we want is justice and rightness. But the mayor is having a prayer vigil for peace and unity. Anytime for me, and I'm speaking out of my faith tradition, that the king says unity, it's always acquiescence to the status quo. The people's expressions are not unreasonable. We have to be full-throated and reassert, as we have in the past, for this moment right here. Minneapolis, Nashville is Minneapolis. Don't let nobody fool you. What if Andrew Delkey gets exonerated. But we're going to get together these same people to pray for peace. There are two adjectives or two verbs that have to accompany peace for me to make sense of what you're talking about. Peacekeepers, stay silent. Peacekeepers, acquiesce. Peacemakers, go through sometimes the turmoil and the chaos of creating a sustainable peace. We have allowed ourselves to clearly show that we're more concerned with property, loss of property, than the restriction of liberty and the loss of life. My heart hurts. I have been in a state of flux as we try to reach out and make connections, that this is an opportunity for Nashville to lead the way. The issues are already on the table. They have not gone away. But we act like our heads are in the sand, to where my frustration is having to remind people, you weren't here for the last 5 years. You want to cry for George Floyd's mama? I heard Miss Lee on Saturday. I believe, and again, I know that this is a board, and I try to work anywhere I can to do what I can. But for me, this is one of those times where a full-throated, this is the cover that the city needs to use to finally make some systemic changes in our own policing problems, or we'll be back here again. When even in this first situation, they're not even clear. It appears that the guy may have accidentally shot the taser and he slipped and fell in the gravel. The guy never came at him, and the guy ends up getting shot in the leg. And when the warrant was taken out, they did not even record that he was shot in the incident. And see, now you may think, well, what does that matter? It matters a lot when you show up in court. It matters a whole lot. I'm going to shut up, but this is a moment. It's a moment. We don't have to talk about what's wrong here in Nashville. We got 3 reports: Department of Justice, driving while black, and a city paid for policing project. Nashville has never even apologized for the harm it caused the community in its over-policing. My heart is heavy that it costs sometimes to do the right thing. If you are concerned about Minneapolis, don't act like you haven't been in Nashville for the last 5 years. We are Minneapolis, and I'm game to do to whatever level your own comfort is, to speak to this moment right now, not wait till next month and come out with something. Right now. Right now. The pain, the frustration that for people who have no language. I've been asked by the media, and no one's printed anything I've said, because there are enough talking heads about the violence. Because when you march through downtown, as long as you don't tear up shit, life goes back to normal. But the minute something happens, we want to turn our attention to the violence and never thought about why people were marching. They were marching because their hearts joined with Minneapolis. Their hearts join with Dallas. Their heart joins with LA. It joins with New York. It joins with Florida. It joins. Policing is a problem for Black and brown people. The chief said months ago, we're not going to do body cameras. We run to the mayor issues a statement. No, we are going to do body cameras. COVID shows up in town. The mayor says we're not going to do body cameras. You know what the community heard? Chief already said that. Chief said that months ago, that we're not going to have body cameras. Now the mayor has amen the chief, and we're not going to have body cameras, and we're going to hide behind COVID. The chief never wanted the COB. And it's worked even now. As of last week, not, but the people voted for that. So we can write some nice political rhetoric to state our claim, but I bury people. And I have to look at families. And for a man who is dying and asked to breathe, and he calls for his mother, I've experienced trauma on my spirit. And nicety, talk nice, political, appropriate talk for me won't calm my spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Davey Tucker. Thank you. That's what I was asking about.
So this is your director, Mel. I know a bunch of you have your hands raised, and we're gonna get there. And you're absolutely right. It's difficult to maneuver with, public meetings and, how you build a full-throated response on the fly. In this context, it is very difficult. And I for one was very thankful that we had this meeting set. Because, I want to put out a statement, but I don't want it to be from me. I want it to be from you. You are the commissioners. So one option may be, if what Commissioner Tucker said moves you, and reflects, what you feel, I can work with that, and draft a statement, and then work with Commissioner Tucker, on the language. And we can also listen from other commissioners who have their hands raised, so I can ensure that any statement I put out, to the, best of my ability, can reflect the comments that you're making. That's one way to approach it right now. Would you be willing, first of all, Tucker, would you be willing, to do that with me?
Whatever you need. And again, I hate having to do it. My intensity is not from my rage. It's from my hurt that causes the rage. And I just feel sometimes I have to say that. But yeah, I have no problem helping you, Bill.
Okay, Commissioner, yes, you've had your hand raised.
All right. I appreciate Commissioner Tucker's words, and I'm sure he said things much more eloquently than I can. I guess my issue, I want to sort of be like a bulldog and grab onto one item that we've talked about for a while, which is these body cams. Someone early in this meeting a while ago, when talking about the testing, was trust, talking about trust. I don't see how you can have a sense of trust, sort of the most basic, obvious step for transparency has been thwarted for several years, which is the body cams. And I think that if this isn't enough to get movement on body cams, then I don't think there's any hope on it. So to me, I would like to see a determined focus on pushing that with whatever we can. I can't, I'm a lawyer, so I think about things in a lawyer way. How do you get the facts out if there's not somebody standing there recording what happened? Nobody will ever believe the victim. Nobody will ever get the context of what actually happened unless you can piece together video camera from nearby people or onlookers. So I think the body cams are imperative to sort of give some sense of trust and have a document of, you know, what's happening. It's like the old saying, you put locks on the doors to keep the innocent people out. So, you know, you can see what's happening, you can monitor the situation. I'd like to do what we can on that. I know at one time we talked about having hearings on why the cameras haven't been ordered. You know, I'd be up for that. But certainly whatever full-throated statement we make ought to include a plea for the body cams to actually be purchased. And we're going to afford to rebuild the courthouse and all this other stuff. We can afford to get body cams.
Thank you, Commissioner Yesback. Other people who have their hands raised, Commissioner Richmond. Marissa, you there?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my cursor. Actually, I wanted to, we suddenly shifted to new business. I was still on old business. And so I just wanted to make one final comment for the record on the fairgrounds issue with regard to the trans woman. She did leave the fairgrounds. She went to a separate facility on 8th. I don't have the name of it. And then around May 12th, she left the state of Tennessee and moved back to Iowa, a former resident. So I just wanted to make sure that got into the record. You had made a brief reference, and I just wanted to clarify that. And as far as the new business, I want to just, you know, support everything that's been said, particularly by Commissioner Tucker. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Let me see. I want to be equitable. We have Commissioner Vanek and Commissioner Dash have their hands raised. I'm not sure who had it up first.
I will defer to Commissioner Dash.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dash?
I was just going to say that for the new business, if he is comfortable with it, I appreciate all of Commissioner Tucker's words, and whatever action we make, you know, if the media isn't going to put Commissioner Tucker's words, you know, out there, then I think it's up to us. I feel comfortable just, you know, the words that he said moved me a lot, and I think it's important for other people to hear those words. And so when you all are working together to just make sure that his words are shared in that space. And I really wanted to just thank him for sharing and really say that it moved me a lot.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanek?
I was going to speak just to try to make sure we had something moving forward. I don't know procedurally whether it is better for you to go forward with Commissioner Tucker to put something together, or if you put something together and we have a special called meeting later on this week to endorse that statement. It makes no difference to me. I just want to make sure that the voice of the commission is heard and it reflects what Commissioner Tucker said.
Yeah, I don't logistically what is the best, and if there is a strong inclination to hold a special meeting that can be done. You know, setting up these meetings and preparing for them does take your director's time. And so I can use that time to help craft that language and get it out. So really, I'm open to either of those things. Commissioner Pryor has her hand raised. Aaron?
Thanks, Mel. I just want to say, like, thank you, Commissioner Tucker, for everything that you said. I, as I have been for many days, was in tears, which I think we all can you know, at different levels, from my students contacting me and asking me how they can be allies, to them trying to sign petitions. This is continuing to be a thing. What I want to say is that whatever you all draft, obviously I would be willing to read and contribute. But what I want to be understood and said is not just an appeal to the emotion of this, but to the systemic, endemic problem that we have in this country with race, and that it's rooted in colonization and the construction of white supremacy and white privilege that is maintained today in various forms. And what is happening right now is so evident that it is, we are no longer in a position to shut up. And so this, as a commission, is definitely in a position to, you know, say or do something. And I just don't want it to be, and by no means, Reverend Tucker, do I think that it would be lip service, but I don't want us to come slightly. I want us to come with the real of the real of the real. And what's going on right now is, this should be a time of unity. And this is such a I'm sorry, I'm going to be done because I can't even do it. But this is such a reflection of Trump, of COVID, of the gross systemic inequality in this country. And it's rooted in, as my boy Eduardo Bonilla Silva says, we have a racialized social system first and foremost. And this is a perpetuation of, as colorblind racism is, the perpetuation of the unequal status quo at its finest, and then denial. And so I'm sick, but I am also enraged and frustrated and motivated and here to support anything. But I do not want whatever it is that you all write up. I'm willing to help, but I want it to come with the real of what is happening here and not just the emotion of now. This is 450 some years in the making, and it's never gone away. It's just looked and changed and been constructed differently and enacted differently with all of the same outcomes. And as I always say to my students, and excuse my French, if all we do is look at outcomes, then that's not shit, because the reality is, or if all we do is look at progress, excuse me, that ain't shit when we look at outcomes. And if the outcome continues to be gross inequality, that progress means nothing by comparison. It doesn't mean we need to shun the progress. It just means that what we have to deal with is the outcome. And the outcome is, in this country, in the state of Tennessee, we have a race problem, and it has not left. So that's it. I'm done. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken for so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pryor. All right, we have hands raised, and I don't know if they are actually raised or if they just weren't put down.
I have something very brief I just want to add, and then I'm out as well.
Yes, please.
I just wonder, like, Davy Tucker's whole thing could be just written and read all across the internet. It was gorgeous, and it was so meaningful, and it's about Nashville, and I think being specific to Nashville is very important. So I'm one with just like that, and I'm also one with like getting this thing out as soon as possible, and being very clear that the police department issue, which is sort of what I wanted us to mention, is the big one, and it's all throughout what Commissioner Tucker said, but like sort of have it up front and very, very, clickable, like very soundbiteable, so that if people don't read a long sort of lengthy letter from the commission, and I know we're not known by the people, but that it's punchy, I guess is what I'm saying. And I know you're getting tons of guidance, and it's probably just gonna make you crazy, but I'm just gonna put in my words. I think it should be, Tucker's was gorgeous and beautiful, and I think that would be in its whole, just record, if this WebEx is recorded, you could just literally publish that thing. And I think at the beginning, there's a paragraph that says the commission does not stand for police brutality, and it calls for, CAMS, COB compliance and cooperation, and whatever the two other things are, and be very upfront and clear about what we want, as opposed to sort of the typical advocacy letters that we and everybody does, just because it's a lot more time for you, and this thing is.
Well, and thank you very much for that guidance. And I just want to put on the record that no, you all don't drive me crazy. I have now worked for 5 years, having 17 bosses. So I've gotten pretty good at navigating the 17 opinions. And I really appreciate what you have to offer. We have one. Okay, we've got Commissioner Pretorius has her hand raised, and then before we end the meeting, we have a point of business that I actually need us to address before we're done with the meeting. So, Commissioner Pretorius.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that instead of another written piece, maybe in addition to the written piece, could we not just publish the recording? That recording is so powerful, and if we could spread it in that video form, would be I think, in addition to having it written down, a very powerful tool, in my opinion. And then also, I just had a few questions, and the one is that, do we still not have a chief diversity officer? So I know Ashford Hughes left, and who is in his place now in the mayor's office? And then also, I wanted to know what was happening with the My City Academy, with the new director for the Office of New Americans, and what is happening there. And then that's it.
So I can report to you that from my understanding, no, there is no current chief diversity officer or an equity and inclusion officer in the mayor's office. And my understanding was that they were interviewing folks for the New American position. But I'm happy to follow up with Fabian Bedney to see where they are in that process. And I have asked in the past for the job description, and I haven't seen that. So I will follow up to see what the job description is and where they are in that hiring process. Thank you so much for raising that. All right. So I feel like I have a good sense of the direction from you all on a statement. That is something I can start working on immediately tomorrow. And so if there's nothing else on that, Chair Rodriguez, we do need to address the issue of the election of officers. So generally speaking, we, according to the bylaws, right, we put together a nominating committee, and they make take nominations for officers, and then they recommend a slate to the commission to adopt. And that generally happens in this meeting, in the June meeting. Given the global pandemic and the fact that we're not having meetings early on at the stay-at-home orders, we are now behind in that process. So what I would recommend you all do is to entertain a motion to hold over your officers for another month, and to put together a small nominating committee to go ahead and take nominations and be able to come to you next month with a recommended slate. So, yes, can somebody make a motion, please?
Yes, thank you.
I can make a motion to hold over the officers until next month. This is Pratik Dash.
Thank you, Commissioner Dash. Do we have a second?
This is Mariam.
Seconded by Miriam. All those in favor?
Is there any conversation? Actually, Janice, we asked if
Sorry. Conversation?
none.
Hearing none. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, the motion is passed. Thank you very much. And now the next item would be then to get a, do we need to get a committee established at this point?
Yes, if 3 people would volunteer to be the nominating committee, that would be great. And all you really have to do is meet one time to review nominations and then make a recommended slate. Most of the logistical work, my office and me, we do it.
Volunteer, I see a hand raised, Commissioner Pretorius.
Quibby, are you well? Maybe you didn't put down your hand before, but can we take that as being a volunteer for the nominating committee?
Yes.
Yes, count me in.
Yes.
Great.
I see a hand raised with Commissioner with Miriam. Correct?
Yeah, Miriam, do you have your hand up still, or are you volunteering?
Hand up, volunteering.
Wait, say that again?
I'm volunteering.
Okay, great. We got 2. So third.
See Commissioner Gibson.
Yes, I'm happy to volunteer as well.
Great. Thank you all.
And
Mel will get with you all and the nominating committee by email to set up a separate meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So that concludes the new business as indicated on the agenda. I'm not sure of the order because of my joining late, but was there a director's report or anything else that needed to be addressed before we adjourn?
We've already run late, but hold on. Let me open my director's report and see if there's anything seriously pressing.
Thank you.
No, there really isn't. We have finally set up a SharePoint site for the commission, which you'll be able to maintain a shared calendar, and we'll be able to share documents with you all through that SharePoint site. And you should be receiving an invitation in the next week or 2. And I can help talk you all through using that SharePoint site. And I will email you a written director's report, and I will append the written director's report to the minutes for this meeting.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. All right. We're at the point in the agenda for any additional announcements before we adjourn? If you have something to share, you can signify with a raised hand or a visual waving of a hand. I'm seeing none at this point. Oh, Pratik?
I just want to make one last comment, and again, thank you all for bearing with me. But I really want to, because we talked about the new business and everything, I just want to give, a lot of condolences and the shout out to all of our commissioners as Black to be in this space at this moment and to deal with what you're dealing with. I can only imagine what you're feeling. After 9/11, I felt a fraction of what I'm feeling now, and it was very hard and unbearable for me. And so I just wanted to say that I acknowledge that you are carrying a huge being in this room, virtual or not virtual or whatever. And just wanted to say thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
It looks like,
Kobe has her hand up.
yep, she does. Commissioner Pretorius and Commissioner Pryor, will you please mute?
Oh, I thought.
Thank you.
Okay, so just one the last thing. After visiting the homeless shelter, and they really are looking, I see several of our guys still on the screen. If you have extra shirts or pants or shoes at home that you want to send to the homeless shelter, I've been collecting, and if you guys, I'm willing to pick it up and take it over there. Or if you have a contact for face masks, they seem to really need face masks over at the homeless shelter. If you have a contact for face masks, let me know.
And I'll follow up. The face masks, I presume they are using like disposable face masks, but I don't know if they can use cloth ones given, but I'll follow up with Judy and Renee and perhaps Marcel, because I make face masks, so
I have facilities to do washing there, so they can use those, but they are going through the disposable ones rapidly.
They were wearing cloth masks as well, so I think at this point anything helps.
Commissioner Dash, I've got plenty of shirts that I've been trying to get to Goodwill. I'd rather give them to you.
They also need shorts and t-shirts for the warmer weather, definitely for men. They've got plenty, they seem to have more women's clothing, and they're just really struggling with men.
Great. And I just want to thank you and Commissioner Pretorius for visiting over there and bringing your thoughts to the commission, and anything you can send us in writing, reflecting anything else, please do. Send it to me rather.
Yeah. Will do. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for the announcements. At this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Right before you adjourn, I have my hand up.
Oh.
And I just want to share this with you. It's a short quote from Abraham Heschel, an individual who's been really informative in my life. He says, "Our eyes are witness to the callousness and cruelty of man, but our heart tries to obliterate the memories, to calm the nerves, and to silence our conscience. Our eyes are witness to the callousness and cruelty of man, but our heart tries to obliterate the memories, to calm the nerves, and to silence the conscience."
Thank you for sharing.
This is Commissioner Dash. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, we'll adjourn the meeting and look
I'm
forward.
sorry. This is Barbara. Who's second?
Aye.
It was Aaron. It was Aaron. Sorry.
Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we look forward to hearing, getting the document together and meeting on that again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank all of you for everything that you do. I miss y'all in person. Y'all are amazing. Thank you.
Me too. Bye. Love you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Michael, thank you so much for hosting the meeting for us. And with that, you can end the recording.
Okay, thank you. Happy to help.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.